Maybe you're seeing me and hearing me now, maybe you are not. But if you are, it's just to make sure that we don't lose any part of the introduction, which is usually me telling you, hi, how are you guys? Hope you're all well, and running from there. So I believe now you're seeing me. Hello today. Again, it's Makram Hani on The Brief. And today we'll be talking about a subject that since the last live, I had so many questions about. It seems that many people are interested to operate their own banks. And the question was, how does my bank operate? So, and many questions around it that went into detail. So let's recap. Last time we said you save money. Most important rule is that you make more than you spend, or you spend less than you make, because you can control more your spending than you're making in general. And then you take the savings and you invest it. Regardless, this money saved goes into a fund, and there's several funds. As you remember, we said there's a security fund, which is an emergency fund. It's a family emergency fund. And then there is another fund. And then there is, at the end of it, a fund that goes as an investment. And that investment fund is not owned by you, is owned by your bank. And you need to treat it as such. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about that fund where you do have your money. It's not your money anymore per se, it's the bank's money. Now, how does that bank operate? And how do you interact with that bank? This is what we'll be talking about today. So, for everyone who's listening to me the first time now and wondering, what I talk about is I talk about things that help me create the wealth I have created, and it's something that I'm passionate of spreading, and hopefully you can do the same. I'm sure you can do the same. It's not a hopeful thinking thing. However, it all depends on you. It's your habits, it's your culture, it's your habit to look at every detail in your life or not. Now, you can always have a helicopter approach and say, I want to look at the big thing. And I've employed previously juniors who say, I have a helicopter approach. And I always tell them, you'll get somewhere one day where you should have a helicopter approach. Today, your helicopter should fly very low, and you should have such a particular taste to detail and distinguished taste to detail. So, this is what we'll be talking about today. Your bank. You've saved money, it went into your bank. What do you do next? Now, let's say you've saved and you have 100,000 now, and that 100,000, as we said, is owned by your bank, not owned by you. By the way, you can send me your questions immediately. I will hopefully see them. If I don't reply them at the same time, I will reply to them next time, because I intend not to make any of those sessions more than 15 minutes. So that money is saved, it's in your bank. How would your bank act on it? Definitely responsibly. In other words, if you have a vacation, your bank probably will not lend you to go on vacation and use that money. If the bank lends you, you would need to pay that money back. As we said last time, if you pay back HSBC and Barclays and ADCB and any bank you deal with, you ought to pay back yourself. And the best bank to pay is your bank. If you're John, it's John's bank. If you're Muhammad, it's Muhammad's bank. It's your bank that you need to pay back. So that money is owned by your bank now. And every month you're feeding that bank, you're feeding that pot. And when that pot is fed, that bank gets wealthier. And this is what you need. You want to own a wealthy bank and control a wealthy bank. Now, that bank has rules. It will never lend you against liabilities. It will lend you against assets, because that bank needs collateral every time it does lend you. It needs to make sure that you can pay back every time it does lend you. Now, remember also, if you get a bonus or you have a boost in your income, you do not simply start dropping or discounting what that bank gets, or keeping that bank fed as much as it used to be fed, before your bonus or before your promotion, you need to increase that at least in a prorated manner to your previous expenses. But I advise you to increase it at a higher capacity and with more speed and make it richer as a bank. So you fed that bank has 100,000. You want to buy a house to live in. Now, you can go to a conventional bank as well as your bank. Now, your bank is very smart. Your bank wants to deploy the cash and spread it as much as possible. Your bank's money costs you money. So your bank will never lend you for free. If your bank lends you, it charges you interest. Now, you would think this is a complex concept. My bank is charging me interest. I would tell you it's a very simple concept. If you want to go to wealth and have surety to go to wealth, because again, you can go in many directions, which are probably may end someone of you as wealthy. And you can go in a different direction that ends every single one of you as wealthy. So that bank lends you that way. Let's say you got 70% mortgage from a bank in the market. And that commercial bank in the market, while you have a private bank here, lend you 70%, and you want 30%, which is just for an example, for calculation's sake, we will say that the total value of the house you're buying was 100,000. 70,000 came from HSBC or Barclays, and 30,000 will come from your bank, from Henry's bank. And your bank will lend you this money at the same terms that Barclays or HSBC or ADCB have lent you, with one differentiator. Your bank, most of the time, needs the money faster than that commercial bank. So your bank generally will try not to lend you for 25 years or for 10 years or for 5 years. Will probably lend you for something probably between 3 and 5 years is reasonable. And you pay the bank back the money with interest. Remember, it's with interest. Now, what are you doing here? First, you're making sure that every day you're growing wealth and developing wealth. You're making sure that tomorrow morning you're not living in a house and considering it as a free living. Many people tell you when you're buying a house to live in, it's not an investment. I tell you, I disagree. Let's change this method and this model. You're buying a house, it is an investment if you pay rental. Yeah? So the owner of the house, which is the fund, owns an asset that's earning. Now, you as a consumer, you're consuming and paying rent for that. And this is something you need to keep in mind. Now, to go back to our bank has got this money and lends you this money. Now, when the bank lends you the money, it only lends you the money if you're eligible in the market. If you're non-eligible, it doesn't. And the bank, your bank, will restrict you probably to a higher payment percentage, faster payment, maybe sometimes a slightly higher interest, and lends you the money. When you pay it back, you're making your bank wealthier. Remember, you do not pay it back from the saving contribution you had placed or planned. No, you pay it back from your expenses, because if you didn't have that house and your bank didn't lend you money to rent that house, you should have gone for a rental in the market and you should have paid that rent while continuing to save. So now your bank invested in this or lend the money so that your fund can invest in this. Yeah, and here it's the investment fund investing and owning it. And thus, your bank and your fund are being paid back and you're still saving at the same time. Imagine here the cumulative edge that you're giving your bank and your wealth. Imagine that you have 100,000. Now your bank is not only getting additional saving, but getting the 30,000 that you borrowed back with interest. Yeah, as if HSBC have lent you 100% of the money. Now, how do you treat your bank? You should take it as an Excel sheet. You don't need an accounting software, although there's very simple ones to run. But I'm a guy, for example, who doesn't like neither spreadsheets nor accounting software, and I believe most people don't. There's people who are very talented at that, but maybe you're not wired for that. So not to worry. A simple Excel sheet that says, this is how much you've taken out, this is how much the payback is. Download a mortgage calculator, calculate how much, and propertyeportal.com, by the way, can give you a mortgage calculator. You go to insurance and mortgage, and you see a mortgage calculator that can give you how much is your payment, how much is your total payback, and how much does it cost you. Remember here, when you're buying a property as well or doing an investment and your bank is lending you the money, that investment is also not owned by you. So you don't own a property or two or three. And those property or two or three make money because you've sold it and you made money on it. And that profit goes to you, not to the bank, not really. That profit goes to the owner of the property, which is the fund, your fund. Yeah, it's John's or Henry's or Muhammad's fund. And that fund owns your property and the profit on it. Now, if you've done an extraordinary job, you can pay yourself a property management fee if you're running it and you've done an extraordinary job on rental, or if you're selling and you've done an extraordinary job on sale. However, you do not pay yourself the profit because you don't own the asset. Your fund does. Now, you tell me that's so complicated. Where would I go with this? I tell you, you reach a day where not only are you self-sufficient, your bank can employ you, where you never need to work again in your life. Your bank employs you to invest that money or to deploy that money. Your fund employs you to deploy that money. Now, another very simple concept that we've talked about, and today we'll talk slightly more about. Every property is an entity. It's a standalone entity. What do we mean by that? You own a property, and then you own another. This property is earning rent. It's paying back HSBC. It's paying back John's bank, your bank. And then there is an additional cash flow, hopefully, which is a free cash flow. Where does this money go? Who owns this money? This money goes back to the property. So you create a silo around every property or set of properties to create a fund within the fund, a sub-fund. And this money goes to those properties. Why? Because those properties can grow their strength so that your portfolio can stress test well. And we've talked before about stress testing your portfolio, and we'll talk again about stress testing your portfolio, because there's always a crisis behind the door. Yeah, there's always a boom behind the door if you're in crisis, and a crisis behind the door if you're in a boom. Now, you're stress testing your portfolio. The property or the portfolio owns cash. It means it's becoming wealthier. Eventually, it can own more assets and it can grow from itself. And the best thing you can reach is that when you have 3-4 portfolios, and each of those portfolios is growing the wealth on its own. So imagine you never need to feed it again for it to grow. Yeah, you can be satisfied and say, okay, it's growing alone. Now I'm doing living, and my funds are doing growing wealth alone on their own. That's the concept of you engaging each property, each set of properties, or each sets of investments for people who have investments outside the property market. You do have those, and those simply grow day after day after day. Remember, those are simple concepts. They look complex, but if you look at the details of them, if you have 1 or 2 or 3 properties, or you have 1 or 2 or 300,000, it's so simple that anyone can manage. Now, when it grows and becomes 20 million, obviously you would need more effort and more knowledge to manage. But at that time, it will be feasible for you to sit and educate yourself to be able to manage it. At the same time, we'll post continuous material for you to be able to manage stuff when it grows. Because remember, you should be growing right now. You should be taking this knowledge and developing. So next time you save money, it's not your savings, it's your bank's savings. Your bank is growing. You as a consumer are earning and spending similar to how you used to do, or similar to how most people do. And then your wealth is regenerating and growing there. And this can help you create an infinite return. And when an infinite return, there's an infinite mindset. And the infinite mindset, something is infinite whenever it can regenerate perpetually. Imagine that those funds can regenerate perpetually without your intervention, with more capital injection to them. Think about it. I'll not take long today. Thank you so much for being with me in the brief. I hope I'm adding value to you. I'm not boring you. My target is not to bore you, obviously. I'm not sure I'll reach my intention every time I try, but I will push hard to make that attempt a reality. And at the same time, I'll look forward for your questions so that the next session will be richer. Hopefully, the next session will talk about, so we now invested in property, we've invested in any other thing. Now I'll talk to you about investing in property, but the same concepts can apply to any other asset class. And then you took this investment, you've created savings, as we said, we create your own bank. You created a silo, a fund of every asset or every sum of assets. Now we'll take those concepts further and we'll start learning how to develop thinking about an asset, how to maneuver within bust and boom, how to get fearful or get greedy, and how to get emotional or not get emotional about an asset and about an investment. All of this is to come and much more. Thank you all for being with me, the two of you, whoever it is. And